with the use of English part 2. I believe we all had a beautiful week. Please feel free to fill the attendance as you are coming in. I want to just make a quick announcement to everyone. Please, if you are yet to make your acceptance fee payment, kindly do so. All right. And then also on the group, there was a quiz a giveaway quiz that was, okay, not a quiz, there was a giveaway instruction for all of our students. Please kindly engage. You could be a winner as well. All right, we have limited slots left, and today happens to be the end of that giveaway session. Also, the next announcement is about your test, which is going to be coming up on Monday on the topic Elements of Entrepreneurship. Introduction to Entrepreneurship. Some sample questions was sent to you on the group. I believe you have gone through it because we'll be taking random selection out of those questions to set your test for you. So kindly read up. The link to your test will be sent to you on Sunday, 24 hours before the D-Day. So you can take your test conveniently at any time of the day on Monday. All right. Please, if you have any queries, any inquiries, you can feel free to chat on the group. All right. So without further waste of time, okay, while we are still waiting for some of us to join, I want to appreciate you for joining us today. You're welcome, Jimoski David. You're welcome. You're welcome, Chuku Ebuka. You're welcome. You're welcome, Honesty. Okay, so please let's wait a bit for others to join. Thank you and do have a beautiful session.
I think the lecturer is ready now. Mercy. And please, Boma, please mute Bello. Boma, are you there?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Yes, I am here and I'm ready. I'm not understanding this feedback I'm getting though.
Right.
Yes, I am hearing it too.
Okay, should we?
I think it's better now.
Log out? Okay, I think, okay. Yeah, it's better now. It's better now.
Okay. Okay, Mercy, you can take it up from here.
All right, everybody, you are welcome once again to class. So without further ado, we are going to be welcoming our lecturer who will be taking us on introduction to, the use of English in the person of Feyisayo Odejide. You are welcome, ma'am. Please, you can take it off from here.
All right, thank you, Mercy. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. You're welcome to the class today. And I won't waste your time. It looks like I've wasted some of it already, so I'll just go straight into it. I'll share my screen and then we will begin, okay? Yeah, let me share my screen. we'll be going into, where are my slides now? 1 minute, please. Communication in English is what we'll be doing today. I can't seem to find my slides. For some reason, my slides aren't showing. Just a minute, please.
Mercy, please, Boma, please mute Bello. I think the echo is coming from his end.
I've done that now.
Okay.
But
Right, can you see my screen?
yes.
Please, can everyone be muted? It seems like the feedback is coming from someone on the call. Okay, lovely. I can, no, I can still hear it. It's very distracting. Is everyone muted? Hello? Okay, great. Okay, now we can begin. Yeah. So we'll be going into communications in English. I mean, it's absolutely important that if you're learning to speak a language adequately, then it makes sense that you are able to do it properly. Okay, because what is worth doing is worth doing well, right? Remember, my mom used to say that to me quite a lot, but it had nothing to do with English. However, it remains facts. So we're going to be going into communication in English. And so I'll be taking us through the communication skills that are available in the English language. We'll be talking about the definition and the importance of communication, the types of communication that exist, and our basic communication models, okay? So, what is the definition of communication? What is the definition of communication? And basically, it's just what? The exchange of information, the exchange of ideas, exchange of thoughts, feelings, and messages between individuals or groups through various channels. Okay? The process of exchanging information, exchanging ideas, exchanging thoughts, feelings, messages between individuals or groups through various channels. And there's so many different kinds of that, okay? Now, it's very important that we communicate effectively, because at the end of the day, you want to be able to convey your intentions, you want to be able to build your connections, you want to be able to resolve conflicts, you want to be able to achieve mutual understanding. And without communication, it goes without saying that there will be all kinds of conflicts and all kinds of inefficiencies. These end up hindering your personal and professional success. Imagine going into an office where everybody's speaking different languages. I mean, come on. It goes without saying that that's going to be a lot of what hula baloo, you know? So we don't want hula baloo in our daily interactions, as it were. Okay? So we have different kinds of communication. We have verbal communication, we have non-verbal communication, we have written communication, we have visual communication.
Recording in progress.
We have visual communication, we have interpersonal communication, all kinds of communication, okay? So what is verbal communication? Verbal communication, like it rightly says, is the use of spoken or written words to do what? To convey messages. Spoken or written words to convey our messages. And this type of communication will encompass a wide range of mediums and settings, and they include face-to-face, phone calls, video conferences, speeches and lectures, and also written documents. Face-to-face conversations, phone calls, video conferences, speeches and lectures, and written documents. It's important to note that it goes way further than just face to face, because when we hear verbal communication, the first thing that comes to most people's minds is the face to face, or you're talking to someone who is in front of you. But then it's important to remember that it's also phone calls, video conferences, speeches and lectures, and written documents, because all of these things require some kind of either speaking or writing, and that is what verbal communication is. So in the face-to-face, it's involved with direct interactions, right, between individuals. Words are spoken, non-verbal cues come into play, and then, communication, as it were, is not complete unless you have feedback, right? So there's also the responses involved in that. So there's a couple, more than a couple anyway, of forms of communication, especially where the face-to-face is concerned. And so we have under these the immediate feedback, the nonverbal cues, and the personal connection. In the immediate feedback, you can, like it says, the participants can immediately measure, what the other person's reaction is. And this happens in real time. So, this allows you to immediately adjust, as it were, your communication strategies. So if you're saying something to someone and it looks like they're not quite understanding you, or they're misconstruing what you're saying, you can immediately see it, in their face, or hear it in their responses, and then you can immediately clarify, which takes us to our non-verbal cues. Because people's facial expressions, their posture, their gestures, their eye contact, it provides additional layers of meaning and emotional context to verbal messages. I remember there was a time I sent a text message to a friend, And immediately the person called me back saying, oh, what's the matter? What is it? Why are you okay? And I asked, why are you asking me that? And they said to me, oh, your tone, the text message, the tone in your text message sounded a bit off, like you were angry. True to form, I was angry when I was responding, you know, and immediately I responded. The person was able to pick that up. That's a non-verbal cue, you understand? So it goes way beyond the facial expressions or the gestures or the posture. Now it's even in the tone of, you know, my wording in that text message. So non-verbal cues are very important when you're having face-to-face conversations, not to now talk of when you're not even having face-to-face conversations like in the example that I gave, okay? Now we also have what personal connection, because face-to-face interactions, they tend to foster a sense of intimacy, you know, trust, rapport between the people who are doing the communicating, all right? So enhancing the quality of communication and relationship building is what personal communication ends up doing. Then we have what? Phone calls. Phone calls. Phone calls involve verbal communication, okay? And this is conducted over phone lines, like we all know. Everybody, I reckon, everybody has a phone, one kind of phone or the other, and we all use them to communicate, you know? So, I mean, phone calls, they become very convenient. In fact, they've gone, if there's a pass mark to be given with regards to convenience, then phone calls takes 110%, I believe. Because I remember when I was much younger, I grew up in Germany, and I was born in Germany and spent a couple of years, more than a couple of years before moving back to Nigeria. And I remember my dad would always want to talk to my granddad. And whilst we had a phone in the house, getting what's it called now? A phone for my grandfather to communicate with us was a bit of a challenge, because there was a challenge with his phone at home, and so he had to go somewhere else to receive calls in order for us to have the kind of communication that, you know, was required. So, I mean, we've come a very long way, very, very long way from then when it was the dial phone all the way to now, where everyone and their dog has a phone. So, I mean, it's been a journey of I don't even know what to call that journey, but it's been a journey getting here. And now we have the convenience of the phone, the telephone for everyone. Okay, so I mean, it's a very convenient means of communication that allows individuals to connect, you know, with others. It's allowed the world to become a global village. It allowed it to become a global village. So much so that, you know, it's even gone miles ahead of just having the telephone, you know, to speak with your loved ones and your friends, to now even having internet, instant messaging, and all whatnot. Okay. Now, another thing that phone calls bring to you outside of convenience is clarity. Clarity. Because what? Verbal communication over the phone allows for immediate, in fact, I dare say that despite the fact that we all have have access to things like WhatsApp and all those other instant messaging, it's still not the same as speaking to someone directly. Sometimes you don't even want to type so much, and you just want to get your thoughts across to the person. You give them a call, you get the immediate feedback, and that just ends it. And then we have the personal touch. Phone calls allow for personal touch. So despite the fact that there are no visual cues, because we're not talking about video messaging now, despite the fact that there are no visual cues, phone calls still allow individuals to convey their emotions. So you can tell someone's tone of voice over the phone. You can even tell their personality sometimes over the phone. Their expressions, are made very clear over the phone. And we have something called video conferences. And this used to happen, these happen a lot in the offices, in the corporate settings, as it were. So you have video meetings that you conduct via video conferencing platforms. And these allow for face-to-face communication regardless of physical distance, It allows people in Tokyo to talk to people in Nigeria face-to-face, as it were. Yeah, you can understand. So the visual communication aspect of it allows you to understand the person's facial expressions and see it, their gestures, their body language, things like that, So video conferencing and conferences, is a step or several steps in the right direction. Okay, and then we have real-time collaboration. And this enables the participants to share documents while doing their video conferencing. The way we are like this now, this is some kind of video conference, as it were. Because if I wanted to put on my camera, you'd be able to see me and I would be able to see you, And as it is, you can see my screen, my computer screen. So you can see everything that I am doing on my computer in real time, okay? And then of course, video conferences at the end of the day is cost and time efficient. I don't have to sit in a class with you. You don't have to travel all the way to my training facility, and I don't have to come to my training facility to sit down and talk to you, face to face, because that would have cost me time getting there, it would have cost me money getting there, and it would have done just the same for you as well. At the end of the day, our communication ends up being what? Effective. And we can decide to interact as well. Okay? So, yeah, video conferences have made life easier for a number of us. And then we have speeches and lectures. Speeches and lectures. And these are formal presentations. So again, it's something we're also doing here, right? Today, right now, as I speak to you, we have a real life example of what speeches and lectures are. So I'm lecturing you. I'm lecturing you right now. I'm informing you as to the subject matter. And perhaps maybe before the end of the class, I would have maybe entertained you as well, hopefully. I'm not sure if I'm that entertaining, but let's see how it goes, okay? So at the end of the day, well, we're sharing knowledge because I'm sharing my knowledge with you. I'm not sure what I'm persuading you to do. And like I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to end up entertaining you, but these are things that can happen. I know that comedy shows can be held now via video conferences. So, hey, let's see how it goes. Okay, and then we have written documents. Written documents involve communications through written words. An example of such are emails, letters, reports, memos, and a host of other written materials that are used for conveying information, instructions, and ideas. Information, instruction, and ideas. And so this form of information and communication offer quite a number of advantages, among which include clarity and precision. You know, it's easier for you to understand what a person writes than what a person is saying sometimes, because people's accents, people's intonations, people's affectations sometimes can cause ambiguity and misunderstanding. But when it's written down, it minimizes such an occurrence. Okay? And then we have documentation. So written documents will provide a permanent record of the communication. It allows for reference, allows for verification, allows for documentation of agreements, decisions, transactions. That's why you find a lot of people doing screenshots of conversations that they've had on WhatsApp sometimes, because they want to be able to refer to it. Peradventure, the initial, the person who they're conversing with on WhatsApp decides to delete their conversation. If a screenshot is made, there's evidence of such a conversation having been had. Okay? And then dissemination. Written materials can easily be distributed and shared with a wide audience. I do know for certain that today, at the end of this class, or maybe tomorrow, this entire class is going up on YouTube. Okay? Now that's a way of disseminating this documentation, as it were. Okay? So these are examples of written communication. We have letters, formal written correspondence, exchange between individuals or organizations for business or personal purposes. And then we have emails. Emails are what? We all know what emails are. Electronic messages sent via email platforms for communication within professional or personal networks. And then further down, we have what text messages. And I mean, text messages have evolved. It no longer is just the regular type of text messaging. Now we have it in by way of WhatsApp and all that all those kinds of things. So yes, text messages, short written messages transmitted via mobile phones or other digital devices for quick and informal communication. And then we have reports and articles. And these are formal documents presenting information, analysis, and research findings in a structured format for dissemination and reference. And everybody's favorite one, social media posts. Everybody posts everything now, okay? People post texts, people post pictures, people post videos, people post ads, people post articles, all kinds of things, okay? So messages and updates shared on social media platforms, often accompanied by multimedia content, links, or hashtags. Okay, so these are all examples and forms of written communication. And then we have the nonverbal communication. The nonverbal communication. And so below here, we have forms and examples of non-verbal communication. And of them include gestures, body language, facial expressions, eye contact, tone of voice. I'll repeat that. Gestures, body language, facial expressions, eye contact, tone of voice. So let's talk about gestures. We all use gestures, everybody. Unconsciously, consciously, we all use gestures. We use hand movements. Sometimes we want to describe the size of something. We want to describe the shape of something. We want to describe the direction of something, someone. Sometimes quantity. And then we do a lot of pointing, waving, making circular motions, all kinds of hand movements. As a matter of fact, I know people who substitute hand movements for sometimes talking. And I'm not talking about the people who are in the deaf mute community. No, I'm talking about people who are not verbally challenged, as it were. Sometimes finding it difficult to find the right words. And at the end of the day, use hand movements to describe what it is that they're trying to convey. And then we have nods. And I know people use this a lot. People nod, people either nod in affirmation or shake their heads when they're not quite affirming something that is being said. Sometimes it is to agree to something or to show understanding of something. And then we have the emblematic gestures. Things like a thumbs up, the peace sign, you know, and all kinds of other non-savory ones, but we won't go into those. And then another form of nonverbal communication is body language. Body language. So whether you're sitting upright or you're standing upright, it can show whether you're confident, whether you're assertive, you know. It even sometimes shows the level of etiquette that one has, as it were, if I'm allowed to use that word, okay? So I remember growing up, my mom would always tell me not to slouch, and I grew up that way. I can't, in fact, when I slouch now, my back hurts. So I can't sit down and slouch. I always find myself sitting upright. It's a testament to, you know, what my mom taught me with regards to how to sit down as a lady. Okay? And these things sometimes they show, you know, different messages. They convey different messages, as it were. You know, if you're sitting down with your legs crossed, sometimes that's a way of showing that, you know, you're confident. Some people cross their arms, and that's a way of showing that they are defensive. You know, you can read different kinds of cues from body language. And then there's something called a stance. Stance. Sometimes you take a relaxed stance, sometimes you take a defensive stance. Sometimes you're leaning forward in a way of, you know, showing interest, or you're just leaning backwards in a way of showing comfort. Sometimes you're shifting, you know, your weight from one foot to another, and that can sometimes convey some kind of nervousness, anxiety, or tension. And sometimes it's just, you know, you getting ready to take a certain action. Okay. And then we have physical movements. And so these are what facial expressions, gestures, things like pacing, tapping your fingers, fidgeting, you know, things like that. So you have to be aware of your body language. You have to be aware of your body language. And at the same time, you should also observe other people's body language. And then we have, of course, the most common one, the facial expressions. Smiles, genuine smiles indicate happiness, friendliness, agreement, while forced smiles will, you know, indicate politeness, sometimes discomfort. You know, sometimes you're smiling just to make someone feel okay with whatever it is that they're saying. And sometimes it's just really to feel good about your own self, okay? And then we have frowns. When you furrow your eyebrow, this can signal displeasure, confusion, concern, or whatnot. And then your eye movements, making eye contact, avoiding eye contact, shifting your gaze. This can convey interest, they can convey attention, they can convey confidence, and they can also convey discomfort. And in Nigeria, especially as moms, we speak with our eyes to our children quite a lot. So what is eye contact? Eye contact refers to the level of engagement with your eyes that you maintain during the conversation, okay? So we have direct eye contact, we have avoiding eye contact, and we have intermittent eye contact, okay? When you maintain direct eye contact with the speaker, this signals active listening, respect, and attentiveness. And when you avoid eye contact, this may indicate shyness, discomfort, confidence, lack of confidence, and also lack of honesty sometimes. Of course, it depends on your culture. For some people, avoiding eye contact is actually a form of respect, a sign of respect. Because I know that in the Yoruba culture, when you're talking to an adult, you shouldn't maintain direct eye contact so much, because they will be wondering, why are you staring me in the eyes? How dare you stare me in the eyes? So it's really very relative. But that's not to say that people will not make assumptions based on whether you are giving direct eye contact or you're avoiding eye contact, okay? And then we have intermittent eye contact. That is you making eye contact at some point, and then at the other point, you're not making eye contact, so you're doing it. And that can also mean that sometimes you're just not comfortable maintaining eye contact for an extended period. Therefore, you want people to know that, okay, I'm interested in what you're saying, and at the same time, I'm not comfortable staring someone in the eyes for so long. And other times, it may also mean that, okay, you're trying to make the person who is speaking to you comfortable. You don't want to overwhelm them so much by maintaining eye contact for an extended period of time. So effective use of eye contact depends on what cultural norms, individual preferences, as well as context of the interaction. It's essential to be mindful of cultural differences and to adapt one's eye contact behavior accordingly. If you're somebody who seeks to be well-traveled, then beforehand, before meeting someone from another culture, perhaps you might want to research how things are done in their part of the world, so that at the end of the day, you're not offending anyone. Okay? Tone of voice. So your tone of voice refers to intonation, pitch, volume of one's voice. And these can convey all kinds of emotions and nuances that may not be expressed through the words alone. Okay? And they play a very significant role in communication. They influence how messages are interpreted and perceived. So what is pitch? Higher pitch may convey excitement. Some people, sometimes when they're excited, you find that their voices are a bit squeakier, higher. I mean, you can tell what someone sounds like when they're excited. You know, sometimes when they're surprised or when there's some kind of urgency, okay? And then the lower pitch, that will then refer to when you're being serious, you know, or when you're trying to assert authority or confidence. Right now, my pitch is quite low, but I can get, you know, quite excited sometimes and find myself speaking with a higher pitch of voice. Okay? And then we have the intonation, rising intonation at the end of a sentence. May signal what? A question. And you see what I just did there? When I said may signal what? That is a high intonation at the end of that sentence. Okay? Sometimes it may be uncertainty. Sometimes it may be uncertainty. And then when we're talking about a falling tone, this will end up indicating a statement or assertion. Okay? Then there's volume. Volume. Speaking loudly may convey enthusiasm. Sometimes emphasis, and other times assertiveness. Enthusiasm, emphasis, or assertiveness. And then, of course, when we speak softly, it may convey intimacy, it may convey seriousness, and it may convey vulnerability. Okay? So your tone of voice definitely would vary depending on the speaker's mood, the speaker's personality, and the speaker's cultural background. It's important, it is essential to pay attention to both words and tone of voice so that you can be sure of the clarity and ensure understanding. We have visual communication. Visual communication. And this comes in forms of presentations, advertisements, infographics, charts and diagrams, multimedia, multimedia content, okay? So let's talk about presentations. These involve the use of slideshows. What I have in front of you right now is a presentation, okay? And multimedia presentations illustrate key points, data, concepts, you know, during meetings, lectures, and conferences. So if you incorporate your visuals, such as your images, your charts, your graphs, diagrams, you're able to enhance audience engagement. You know, you help you to garner their understanding. You help you to reinforce, you know, the messages, the key messages. And so at the end of the day, effective presentation designs include a visual, appealing layout. It has to be clear, it has to be concise, the text has to be concise, and relevant visuals to support the narrative, and convey information efficiently. Okay? Then we have advertisements. Everybody has seen an advert at some point or the other. We see it every day. When we go on YouTube, you see advertisements. On TV, you see advertisements. On radio, you hear advertisements. On WhatsApp, you see advertisements. On Instagram, you see advertisements. On Facebook, you see advertisements. Everywhere around us, somebody is trying to advertise one thing or the other. Okay? So what are advertisements? They're visual campaigns. And what do? They're designed to capture attention. They will evoke emotions. They will communicate brand messages to target audiences. So whatever it is somebody's advertising, there's a specific target audience. And so they tailor their advertisements in order to appeal to such people, such demographic as it were. Then we have infographics. What are infographics? What are infographics? Infographics are visual representations of data, statistics, or processes that simplify complex information and enhance understanding. In other words, a picture that conveys messages using a group of symbols, so to speak. So at the end of the day, you find that you're combining texts, icons, illustrations, charts, in order to be able to create the right kind of infographic to communicate information effectively and speedily. Okay? And they're used generally in marketing, in education, in journalism, and research to present information in a format that is easy to digest, to share, and to remember. Okay? We also have charts and diagrams. Charts and diagrams. Charts and diagrams are graphic representations of numerical or conceptual data. So we have things like bar charts, pie charts, flow charts, organizational charts. You know, these visual tools will help you to visualize trends, relationships, patterns in data, things like that. I know a lot of us have seen an organogram before. That is a kind of chart. An organogram where you're talking about who does what within the context of an organization, okay? So charts and diagrams. And then of course, multimedia content, things that you use to convey messages, as it were, using media formats. You know, you do this combining texts, combining images, combining audio, combining video. You know, at the end of the day, you have an all-inclusive multimedia content. Okay, so at the end of the day, visual communication appeals to human visual senses, making it highly effective for capturing attention facilitating comprehension and fostering engagement across diverse audiences and platforms. Okay? Then we have something called interpersonal communication. Sorry, please give me 1 minute. 1 minute, please. 1 minute, please. Okay, please, can we take a 10-minute break? I need to quickly sort something out. I'll be back shortly. Pardon me, please. This is interpersonal communications occurs between individuals, face-to-face interactions, so to speak. So this, of course, involves both verbal and non-verbal exchanges, okay? Verbal and non-verbal exchanges. And we can characterize this kind of communication by its personal and interactive nature. Personal and interactive nature. It involves thoughts, it involves feelings, it involves information within various social and professional contexts. And so these kinds include conversations, discussions, negotiations, interactions within personal relationships, interactions within professional environments. Okay, so we'll go straight into conversations. Conversations. Okay, so under conversations, we have things like casual chats. We have things like small talk. We have things like deep conversations, you know. What are casual chats? Kind of things that you do on WhatsApp with your friends, and in DMs sometimes with your friends as well. You know, just generally catching up on recent events, politics, weather, all kinds of things. And then we have the light-hearted conversation, which is small talk, you know. It's also the kinds of things that you do to, you know, interact with your friends. And sometimes not necessarily only with your friends, you can also have that with people you're just meeting, but generally you're just making, you know, small talk as it were with, you know, people. You're talking about the weather, you're talking about sports, you're talking about current events, you're talking about whatever it is that comes to mind. You're just generally making, you know, small talk with people. And then we have the deep conversations, you know, and these deep conversations are the kinds that involve things like counseling, they involve things like spirituality, you know, philosophy, personal values. Basically, what you're doing when you're doing this is that you're trying to foster understanding and connection. Because when you have a deep conversation with somebody, you're trying to connect with them on a particular level. Okay, so those are the things that we talk about when we're doing deep conversations. Then we have discussions like debates, you know, brainstorming sessions, focus groups, you know, things like that. You know, you're having under debate, you're having arguments, you know, you're exchanging ideas, you're trying to convince someone of something or persuade, you know, someone of something, okay? Brainstorming sessions, that's when you come together and, you know, you engage in things like exercises, you know, you end up at the end of the day having generated ideas, having come up with solutions, strategies, you know, to address something. Most of the time, it happens within the context of an organization. You know, sometimes it happens within religious settings in churches, in mosques, and all whatnot. And then we also have focus groups. Okay, this is kind of research session where, you know, your participants end up providing feedback, insights, opinions, you know, things like that on products, on services, on initiatives, whatever it is. In this kind of discussion, you find that you have a moderator. Okay, so an example of that would be like a political debate, you know, that kind of a thing. You know, you have somebody who is asking questions, and then, you know, people start to talk about that, somebody else responds to it, things like that, okay? So this is what you do when you have such discussions. And then
Sorry,
we have
ma'am, you are echoing.
I am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Am I still echoing?
It's clear now.
Oh, it's clear. I'm sorry about that. My apologies. Okay. So yeah. So with business negotiations, you're bargaining, you're compromising, so that at the end of the day, everybody involved has a beneficial agreement. Okay. So sometimes it's in contracts and partnerships and business deals. And then conflict resolution is another part of negotiation. Okay. And during conflict resolution, you're facilitating a dialogue or a mediation between people who have conflicts. Okay. At the end of the day, what you want to do is to address what their differences are and find a common ground and come to some kind of resolution, as it were. Okay. And then personal negotiations. Here, we're talking about negotiating people's preferences, their boundaries. Sometimes you find some kind of compromise, in personal relationships like marriage, like parenting, or even household chores. So, you can have personal negotiations with your children, okay, this is what you're meant to do, this is how you're meant to do it, and this is what happens at the end of the day. Things like that. Okay, I know my children often want some kind of negotiation where it concerns washing of plates. So I have two children, and one of them will say, "Oh, it's this one's turn today, and another one's turn tomorrow," and things like that. So yeah, at the end of the day, you find a way to make sure that everything works in harmony. Okay, and then we have interactions within personal relationships. So in family conversations, you want to share news. That's why some families now have WhatsApp groups, where at the end of the day, you're passing information across, you're celebrating with one another, you're, just generally making sure that everybody is together and there's a line of communication for everyone. Okay. And then we have the friendship dynamics where, I belong to a friendship WhatsApp group, where we might not always get to talk all the time, but every now and again we make sure that okay, we sign in, we talk, we engage. Sometimes we even do video messages because everyone is scattered around the world. Okay. And we have the romantic gestures, where we express love, appreciation, affection, we send hugs, we send kisses, thoughtful gifts, basically just trying to strengthen, a bond between romantic partners. This happens between husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends, side chicks and side chickens, and so on and so forth. Okay. And then, of course, interactions within professional environments. We have things like team meetings, job interviews, client presentations, networking events. Okay, so yeah, that's that with that. Okay, now there's something called basic communication models. Basic communication models. Okay, and there are two kinds. There's the Shannon-Weaver model, and there's the transactional model. Shannon-Weaver model and the transactional model. And under the Shannon-Weaver model, we have different components. We have different components. And here we'll expand on those components: the sender, the message, the channel, the receiver, and the noise. Sender, message, channel, receiver, noise. Who is the sender? I'm not even sure I have to explain that, but I will nonetheless. The sender is the person who has initiated the communication process, okay? And so the communication process is sent using some kind of encoding, okay? That message is encoded in a format that can be transmitted. And then the message is the information, okay? It's the idea. It's the content that have been sent by the sender to the receiver. And then there's a channel. The channel is the medium, the means through which the message is transmitted from the sender to the receiver. Okay? Example of that would be what? The telephones, telephone calls, the written documents, the email, whatever it is, okay? And then the receiver is the person, the individual, the entity that the message is directed to, who decodes that which has been what? Encoded and interprets that message to extract what it means, okay? And then the noise, that noise refers to whatever interference or distortion that disrupts the communication process, okay? So at the end of the day, this Shannon-Weaver model is basically talking about the who being the sender, the what being the message, the how being the channel, the to whom being the receiver, and the noise being the distortion or interference, as it were. Okay? I hope I've been able to explain that adequately. And then we have the transactional model. Transactional model. So the transactional model talks about simultaneous encoding and decoding, transactional nature, contextual factors, and the feedback loops. Okay? Simultaneous encoding and decoding, transactional nature, contextual factors, and feedback loops. So in this transactional model, communication is not a linear process, but rather it is simultaneous exchange of messages where both the sender and the receiver are active participants. Now in the Shannon-Weaver model, we noticed that, this one, then the message was going from one person to another through a channel You understand what I'm saying? Through a channel, and at the end of the day, it was received and decoded. However, here we're talking about a feedback being sent back to the sender. Okay? So the transactional nature is where the communication is viewed as a transaction or exchange between both communicators. So one person is talking, another person is offering their feedback, okay? And the feedback can be both verbal or non-verbal, okay? And then we have what the contextual factors, which means that the transactional model requires the influence of context, the environment, and the relational dynamics on communication. So it's not only about what is being said, but how it's being said, how it's being received, how, cultural norms come into play, how social roles come into play, power dynamics, and all those kinds of things. And then we have the feedback loops. Like I said before, the Shannon-Weaver model that talks about a one-way communication, one-way flow of information and all of that. However, in this transactional model, there's an emphasis on the feedback, okay? Because feedback will then, at the end, will allow will allow the two communicators, or maybe more than two communicators, adjust their messages, clarify their intentions, and ensure that there's a mutual understanding. Okay? Now, we'll go into our next title, which is what? Reading skills. Under reading skills, we'll be talking about reading strategies and comprehension techniques. We'll be talking about critical reading and analysis of texts. And we'll be doing some vocabulary expansion exercises. Okay? So let's dive straight into reading skills. Reading strategies and comprehensions. Now there are couple, well, not couple, I keep saying couple. Okay, so let me explain why I keep correcting myself whenever I say couple, and I've been trying to be more attentive to those things. Couple means two. I've heard a lot of people use couple when they're trying to refer to a few things or some things. But whenever we say the word couple, we mean two. So if we say a couple of days ago, we're saying 2 days ago, okay? So pardon me if I keep correcting myself, but I've used a couple of things for a long time and I'm just correcting myself, okay? Now let's proceed. So there are a few reading strategies and comprehension techniques, and of them include things like previewing, predicting, questioning, summarizing, visualizing, and making connections. What is previewing? What is previewing? Previewing is a proactive approach to reading where the readers skim through the text before delving into detailed examination. The skim through the text before delving into detailed examination. And I know a number of people do this. Before they start to read, they just want to know, okay, what are we talking about? What is the context? What is the literature trying to convey? So they skim through first, you know. They look at what the structure is, they look at what the key point is. They do that, and that's why sometimes there's something called the synopsis. When you know there's the book or something like that, you know. So at the end of the day, they're able to better understand what it is that they're about to delve into. Okay? And that's for previewing. So what are the components of previewing? What are the components of previewing? Component number one, skimming through the text. Component number two, identifying the key elements. Component number three, noting the visual aids that exist within the context of that document or literature, and then setting reading objectives as component number four. Okay, so these are things that you want to do when you want to read. It's a very important reading strategy to employ. It helps you to better understand what you're reading. It helps you to understand the context of what you're reading. Okay? And then what are the benefits? Like I said, enhanced comprehension is a key one. And then we have increased efficiency, we have improved focus, we have facilitated note-taking, and we have an enhanced overall reading experience. An enhanced overall reading experience. These are the benefits that you will get when you employ this kind of reading strategy. Okay, next we go into predicting. So a lot of times when I want to read something, once I've read the synopsis, I kind of have an idea where, you know, what is going, especially if you're an ardent reader like I am, you know, you can tell what the conclusion will be, so to speak. Doesn't take away from the joy of doing that reading, of delving into that reading. However, you're able to kind of, you know, make an educated guess about, you know, the content of that literature based on, you know, maybe the title, the headings, the subheadings, or even maybe prior knowledge of the literature. Okay? So by actively engaging in this with, you know, your books, your novels, things like that, you can anticipate what information may end up being present and kind of, you know, guess what will happen within and at the end of what it is that you're reading. So the component of predicting comes to things like analyzing your textual cues, drawing on prior knowledge, formulating hypotheses, and testing your predictions. Okay, so you analyze the textual cues. You know, the title of whatever, maybe a book, for instance, that you're reading, perhaps a subtext somewhere, the synopsis, like I mentioned before, you know, the theme generally. When you analyze it, you kind of have a feeling of what the entirety of that literature contains, okay? So that's one. Secondly, you draw on your prior knowledge. Again, like I said, maybe somebody may have mentioned the book to you before, or you just have an idea of what that thing is about, and then you go on to guess what the outcome of the text will end up being, and then you test your predictions by finishing that literature, so to speak, the text, okay? So at the end of the day, you benefit immensely from the predictions. And benefits come to things like it helping you to stimulate your critical thinking, because you've done this. So the more you do that, the more you try to predict your text, the more your critical thinking is enhanced, and then it encourages engagement. It encourages engagement, it enhances your comprehension, and then it promotes active reading. So you're not reading for the sake of reading, but you're actively reading to better, comprehend, to better interpret, to better analyze, texts generally, okay? And then it helps to support your metacognitive skills, okay? So engaging in predicting supports the development of your metacognitive skills, such as self-monitoring, self-regulation, and reflection. You've read something, you start to see how does this apply to me? How does it interpret the things that I do? It just, some measure of introspection comes along with predicting, okay? And then there's something called questioning. Questioning is a fundamental strategy that encourages readers to interact with the text, okay? By probing questions. So you've read something, you start to question that thing, okay? And it sometimes even offer a counter scenario, as it were, a counter scenario, okay? You start to think, okay, why is the author going along these lines? Why isn't the author going along a different line? Okay, you start to reason logically and think about the implications of the text that you are reading. Okay, so components of questioning. What are the components of questioning? Oh, okay, sorry. I didn't realize somebody had commented here in the group. And yes, previewing is like a trailer of movies. It shows you. In fact, when I was, talking about it, it did occur to me to mention it being like a trailer of movies. So yes, of the movie. So yeah, absolutely correct in that analysis. Amina, thank you. Okay, so components of questioning. Probing for understanding is one, identifying the key information is another, analyzing the author's intentions is another, evaluating logical reasoning is another, and exploring implications, of course, is another. All of this we've already touched upon. Okay, and what are the benefits? It helps you to understand, better. Yes, thank you, Beno. Absolutely. It promotes active engagement, stimulates critical thinking, we've said that before, and it encourages reflection. We've said that also. Okay, and then summarizing. Summarizing is like what you already have, you know, only in the synopsis, only that it doesn't show you what the conclusion ends up being. Okay, so the summarizing involves you condensing the main ideas, you know, and the key points of the text into something that is short and concise, you know. So sometimes you can do that using bullet points and things like that. Sometimes you just generally just tell the story shortly using your own words. Okay. So what are the components of summarizing? What are the components of summarizing? It helps you do what? Identify the main ideas. It helps distinguish the key points. It helps articulate the core messages or the core message of the literature. Yeah, it helps to synthesize the information, and it helps you to prioritize the key concepts of the literature. And at the end of the day, you enhance your comprehension, you promote your critical thinking, it helps you facilitate memory retention, it helps to support effective communication, because once you're able to write down the summary of what it is that you've read, you know, you're better able to communicate, okay? And it encourages active engagement yet again. So you're thinking about, oh, let me summarize what it is that I've read. That means that you have actively engaged with that literature or that text, as it were. All right? So next, we look at visualizing. Visualizing. What does visualizing entail? It entails creating mental images. So you're reading, of course, you're going to start to imagine what it is, especially if it is something that is entertaining, maybe like a novel or work of fiction, or sometimes even like a biography, you know. You start to imagine such person in, you know, in pictures, in colors, things like that, their movements, their speech, their mannerisms, their responses, things like that. That's what visualizing entails. It helps you to create a mental image, you know. It helps you to create mental images. It helps you engage your senses, you know. You sometimes think want to think about what it is that they can hear. When the author is describing a smell, you kind of, you know, start to imagine, oh, maybe he says something like, oh, the person has made a rhubarb pie. You start to imagine what a rhubarb pie smells like, what it tastes like, you know. You start to engage all your senses in within the context of what it is that you're reading, okay? Then you're envisioning scenes and characters. They've described what that person, a particular person looks like, you know, and you start to imagine, okay, the person is tall, the person has chocolate skin, the person has hazel eyes, long eyelashes, things like that. You start to imagine what that person looks like. It stimulates your imagination, you know. You're using your imagination to fill in some of the gaps of things that, you know, were not quite said, but you've also then added and interpreted and read between the lines, okay? And then it helps you to enhance emotional connections, okay? because at the end of the day, when you're doing that visualization, you start to imagine what emotions are felt by the subject or the object or whatever it is, as the case may be. Okay, and then we want to talk about the benefits of visualization or visualizing. Okay, it enhances comprehension, it stimulates imagination, it promotes engagement, facilitates memory retention. I know that there are books that I've read over 20 years ago, and when I see like the cover of that book again, I can remember majority of what happened in that story. And that's because I've delved into the world of imagination, visualization, and things like that. And then, of course, it also encourages empathy, because you're feeling the feelings with the characters in the book, literature, whatever it is. I know I've cried many a time whilst reading a book. Okay, so we'll go next into making connections. Making connections involves relating the text to one's own experiences, because what they say that art imitates life, right? So I'm certain that if you read 20 books, it goes without saying that some of those things will mirror something that you may have experienced in your life. So you start to, sometimes I know that in a lot of books where the main character is female, I find myself I find myself in the shoes of the character sometimes. Like I actually put myself in their shoes, and I start to wonder, okay, what if this person were me? So it helps you to make those kinds of connections where you start to feel like, oh, this thing is happening to you, as it were. And the components of that is what relating it to personal experiences, like I've said before, activating prior knowledge, comparing and contrasting, drawing parallels, synthesizing information. And the benefits of making connections are that it will deepen your understanding, again, promote your critical thinking, encourage active engagement, facilitate a deeper learning, and it will enhance your appreciation. At the end of the day, when you finish reading the book, you come out of it, you're no longer in that the world of fiction, and you what's the word? Appreciate, what it is that has been written, the understanding that you're getting from it, you find out end up developing a deeper appreciation, as it were, for the context and the concepts, the implications, and the themes of that text. And then your overall reading experience is enriched, and you're able to foster a greater sense of meaning and relevance. Okay? Now we'll go into the critical reading and the analysis of texts. Critical reading and analysis of texts. Critical reading involves one actually actively analyzing and evaluating texts in order to do what? To understand deeper meanings. Okay? To understand their assumptions, to understand their arguments, to understand their implications. And it definitely goes beyond the surface level comprehension. It rather goes on to help you engage with the text in a critical and thoughtful manner. Okay? And so here are some of the aspects of critical reading. Aspects. Number one, identifying the author's purpose and perspective. Two, evaluating evidence and arguments. Three, questioning assumptions and biases. Four, analyzing rhetorical strategies. And five, considering context and audience. Now let us identify first the author's purpose and perspective. Okay, let's first of all understand the purpose. That is the first thing you want to do. You want to first of all understand the author's purpose. So what do you do when you're doing that? You want to get the right information and education from the author, okay? The author is seeking to what? Persuade you of something or to entertain you. Now, in order to identify, in order to get that, you have to identify the author's purpose. That way, you're better able to understand the message that was intended, and you are better able to effectively evaluate how it is communicated, right? Then, in addition to understanding the purpose, a critical reader wants to analyze the perspective from which that text is written. What was going through, the author's mind when they were writing this text? Okay? So you want to know, what is the author's background? What are their beliefs? What are their values? What experiences shaped their point of view? Once you're able to properly examine the author's perspective, then you are able to identify their potential biases and the limitations that may have influenced the context and the tone of the text. Okay? Then you want to scrutinize the biases and their intentions. Okay? You want to scrutinize the biases and their intentions. A critical reader does this because you want to start to think, okay, what did this person go through in their life? Where do they come from? What are their ideologies? What are they affiliated with? Once you're able to recognize and acknowledge these, then you as a reader, you're better able to assess how these things, their ideologies, their personal experiences, their affiliations, how they impact the information that they've presented to you, and critically evaluate whether they're reliable or objective. Okay? Then you want to assess the influence on the context, content, and tone. Because the author's purpose and perspective will play a significant role in shaping the context, the content and the tone of the text. So a critical reader, like you and I, will have to examine how these factors influence the language used, the arguments presented, and the overall presentation of ideas, really. If you understand the author's stance, then the reader can understand and assess whether or not the text is balanced, objective, and has any kind of credibility. You also then will be able to know if there is an exhibition of any undue influence or agenda. Remember, we're not only talking about books and novels, but we're talking about all literature, all texts, documents, agendas, manifestos, all kinds of documents. Okay? So what are the implications for credibility and reliability? Identifying the author's purpose and perspective will enable you and I evaluate the credibility and reliability of the text. If we understand those, right? Understand their motivation, understand their potential biases, then as a reader, we can assess the validity of the information presented. That way, we'll be able to make informed judgments and whether or not we can trust what has been written and what we are reading, okay? This will empower us as readers to be able to tell the difference between a trustworthy source and one that may have been influenced by subjective or ulterior motives. Okay? So far, so good. Do we have any questions? Do we have any questions? Or shall I proceed? If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat and I will be happy to answer all your questions. Okay, let me proceed. Let's talk about evaluating evidence and arguments. A critical reader, like you and I, we must meticulously evaluate the evidence, the reasoning, and the logic presented in the text. Okay? We must assess the strength of the arguments and the claims by examining the quality and the relevance of the supporting evidence. We must be able to discern in our assessments, considering the validity and the reliability of the information that has been presented to us. We must scrutinize our evidence properly, meticulously. Okay? We look for evidence in different places, okay? We do our research. We look, okay, so I mean, this morning I saw a video on Instagram where it said that in the Philippines, thousands of sardines washed up onto shore, you know? And I was wondering, I saw the video and it looked like, you know, it was real. However, a lot of the time, we see things that have been manipulated, you know, one way or the other. And so I thought to myself, I need to know if this is fake news or if this is actually true. And so I went looking for evidence as to whether or not this was real. And I later found it to be real. So apparently, there was some kind of earthquake that had happened and had disrupted the sea, so to speak, and that caused the sardines to wash ashore. Okay, so it's important for us to always look for corroborating evidence from multiple sources, just so that we know that whatever information that we are consuming is accurate, especially if we want to share such information. Okay? And then we need to analyze reasoning and logic. Analyze reasoning and logic. You and I need to assess the coherence and the validity of logical connections between premises and conclusions. We need to identify flaws. We need to identify inconsistencies or fallacies in reasoning, okay? Okay, somebody is asking, while scrutinizing ideas or biases, we tend to fight a narrative due to our own perception, rather than understand the writer's points of view. How do we stay objective while reading so as not to miss the main points? So, Stephen, this is actually something that is personal to every individual. We have to keep our minds open and then think before responding, because I know that a lot of time we do not read critically. We do not read critically, we do not read to understand, because if we did, then we would understand in the tone, in the text, what whoever has written is trying to convey. Sometimes they're conveying rubbish, other times they're conveying things that are very important and useful. So it's really about opening up our minds, reading critically, and reading to understand. I hope I've answered that question. I hope I've answered that question. Okay? So let us proceed. Lovely. Okay, so somebody else is asking, what of someone who reads in-depthly but has an issue of impotence? If there's no reality to what is being read, it becomes difficult to digest. What can one do? Okay, so not every literature is good for consumption, right? If you read it and the issue is not something of importance, as it were, you probably would just want to move on, okay? You can't possibly read everything and think that it is useful for you as an individual or for anybody, as it were. So if it's important, if it's useful to you, then of course you can take it and run with it, or you can just ignore it, really. Because if there's no reality, what's the point? Really, just move on. Because everybody who reads that thing will take different things away from it. For the people who see no reality in it, move on. For the people who find something useful out of it, use it. It's that simple. But not everything is useful for consumption. I hope I answered that as well. Chukwebuka. I hope I answered that. Okay. So let's talk about assessing the strength of arguments. Critical readers assess the overall strength. Okay, thank you, Chukwebuka. Critical readers assess the overall strength of the arguments presented in the text. And they do this based on the quality of the evidence and the coherence of the reasoning. So at the end of the day, you want to consider whether the evidence provided is something that will adequately support the author's claims. And I think this is also answering your question, Chukwebuka, right? So you want to know whether the author's claims are adequately supported by the evidence, and whether or not what they're talking about is persuasive or convincing. Okay, so David is asking, how do you handle those who misinterpret you? Well, the key to not being misinterpreted, first and foremost, is to try as much as possible to be clear when you're writing. That means that don't be in a hurry to write things, right? Make sure that the things that you're writing, your literature, your text, they're clear so that they're not open to misinterpretation. However, or rather, not that they're not open to misinterpretation, but more that they're minimized. That is, whoever will misinterpret your text, or the group of people that is significantly minimized. Now, let's now say that they end up still misinterpreting it. You need to know whether it is worth your while to address it or to move on. Because at the end of the day, you cannot please everyone. Sometimes some people just want to misinterpret. It's not your fault. It's not that you've not been clear enough. And I see this happening a lot in comment sections. Okay? So what you want to do is to make sure that you weigh it. Is it worth clarifying? Is it something that is going to affect me adversely or not? If it's worth clarifying, you may want to clarify. If it's not worth clarifying, move on. I hope that I've been able to answer that as well. Okay? So as a reader, you need to weigh strengths and weaknesses of an argument. Take counter arguments into account. Take alternative perspectives into account. Watch out for potential biases, because those ones, which is why I said you need to be careful. People come with biases, notwithstanding. You need to also make sure that you're as clear as possible. If people at the end of the day, because of the biases that they have, tend to want to misinterpret, then you already know that it's not anything to do with you, but with people's biases, okay? Pre-existing biases, as it were. So as a reader, you need to, as a critical reader, you need to consider the validity and reliability, okay? Make sure that whatever it is that you're reading, if you plan to digest it and you plan to take it, make sure that you find that whatever it is that the writer has put across or put out there is valid and reliable, okay? Just remain vigilant for any signs of bias, for any signs of misinformation, any signs of manipulation in the presentation of the evidence and the arguments. Okay, so what are the implications for critical thinking? We want to talk about evaluating evidence. Okay, we want to talk about evaluating arguments. We want to talk about how central they are to critical thinking. Okay, critical readers develop the ability to analyze information. They have to weigh evidence objectively without bias, okay? They have to make informed judgments about the strengths of those arguments. You have to be discerning, you have to be analytical, and you have to be an independent thinker. Don't go with the crowd, okay? Don't go with the crowd. You need to be able to navigate the complex text, understand, read to understand, and understand the diverse perspectives, as it were. A critical reader needs to question assumptions and biases. Okay? You need to interrogate. Excuse me. Sorry, I need to take a drink of water. Thank you. Okay. So you need to interrogate the underlying assumptions, biases, cultural perspectives that are typically embedded in a text. Because these end up challenging the preconceived notions and that people may have, and then you're able to explore the alternative interpretations, you know. You can then uncover hidden meanings and perspectives. So you're doing this, that means that what you're decoding, okay? So you question the assumptions of the writer. You try to avoid taking the information that you're consuming at face value. Strive for a deeper understanding of the text. How do you identify assumptions? How do you identify assumptions? You begin by, excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me, sorry about that. So you need to identify assumptions by questioning, of course, in your mind and in your introspective thinking, the author's perspective, okay? Their conclusions and their arguments. So you're thinking about, okay, what point of view is this author coming from? These arguments, do they make sense? Thank you, Stephen. Do they make sense? The conclusions at the end of the day, are they coming together? Okay, so you need to question those assumptions that underpin that the text content, and you critically evaluate their validity and the relevance to the topic at hand. Okay, we'll be breaking in about another 27 minutes, so I think I'll take my break then. Thank you very much, Stephen. Okay, and then challenging biases. Now, in addition to questioning the assumptions, a critical reader needs to be able to interrogate any bias or predisposition in the text. Okay? And these include biases related to culture, to ideology, to personal experiences, or to affiliations that may influence the author's perspective and presentation of information. Okay? You need to kind of, because I mean, when I read, I always go to think and interrogate and investigate also what or where the author is coming from. What is their cultural background? How did they grow up? You know, different things like that, so that I'm able to understand, okay, is this person being objective, or are they being influenced by their upbringing? Most people, their first book, especially when it comes to non-fiction or fiction, comes from their personal experiences. And so you find that a lot of those things that they write, they're being influenced by their background, by their upbringing, by their life experiences. Over time, they evolve and then are more objective in the things that they write. Okay? And then you might want to, as a writer, not might, you should actually explore alternative interpretations. Okay? So on David, I think this will answer your question even further. That some people are not critical readers, and because of that, they misinterpret. But if you're a critical reader, then you find that, okay, whilst you've interpreted what it is that someone has said in a particular way, you can decide to explore an alternative interpretation, meaning that, okay, maybe this person does not mean this thing the way that I've interpreted it. What if he means it this other way? Okay, so you then go ahead as a critical reader to look at different viewpoints, to look at the cultural context. Sometimes you might even want to look at someone's possible mental state of mind, okay? In order to better understand and objectively view the text. You need to uncover cultural perspectives, okay? Pay attention to the cultural perspective embedded in the text, how they shape the author's worldview and their assumptions, okay? Consider how, their values, their cultural values, their cultural norms, and their beliefs influence how they present their information. Look at how they've portrayed different groups, different identities, okay? And then make your conclusions based on that, okay? Strive for a deep understanding, most important. If there's a deeper understanding to be found, look for it, strive for it. Try to read not based on the face value of what you're reading, but what are they saying that they haven't said? Read between the lines, okay? So that you can then better understand the content, the themes, and the implications. If you question the biases and the assumptions, it will help you to be a little bit skeptical, at the same time, open-minded. You may be circumspect, but at the end of the day, your curiosity is piqued. Your intellectual curiosity is piqued, okay? So you're able to then develop the ability to critically evaluate the information and then consider the multiple perspectives and engage in reflective analysis, okay? Because again, you don't want to read a text and swallow everything hook, line, and sinker. You need to be able to think independently. That's why a level of skepticism and being circumspect is required, okay? Analyzing rhetorical challenges. A critical reader needs to be able to use rhetorical devices such as the ethos, pathos, and logos, okay? Ethos meaning the appeal to credibility, pathos meaning appeal to emotion, and logos meaning appeal to logic. Okay? These will help assess how strategies are employed and how to persuade, inform, or even entertain the audience. Okay? Now, critical readers will typically evaluate the effectiveness of these rhetorical strategies. When you're using the ethos, for instance, It will help you assess whether or not an author is credible. And it will help you enhance the persuasiveness of their arguments, right? Whilst when you're using their pathos, as a critical reader, you want to consider the emotional impact of the author's appeal, right? And whether or not they evoke the desired response from the audience. And then, as a critical reader, when you're using the logos, you want to evaluate the strength of the logical arguments that the writer has presented. I want to know whether they are supported by credible evidence or even sound reasoning. Okay? Then you want to discern the author's intentions. What was their reason for writing what they wrote? What did they hope to achieve? What did they hope to achieve when they wrote what they wrote? Were they trying to inform? Were they trying to persuade? Were they trying to entertain? Were they trying to provoke the audience? And how rhetorical devices are used to achieve these strategies, as it were. Now, let us look at the implications for critical reading, critical thinking. Implications for critical thinking. Analyzing rhetorical strategies enhances critical skills by enabling readers to evaluate the persuasive techniques used in texts. A critical reader develops the ability to discern the underlying motives and intentions behind the author's arguments and assess the effectiveness of the rhetorical strategies. So, as a critical reader, you are able to also think critically, okay? Then from the moment you start to, critically look at what it is that is being presented to you, you now want to figure out what their motives are. What are they trying to convince you of? What is the intention behind what was written? Okay? Considering texts and audience. Considering text and audience. Critical readers contextualize the text within its social, cultural, historical, and political context. They consider factors such as time period, in which the text was written, the cultural norms of the author's society, and the intended audience. Now, by understanding the context in which the text was produced, a critical reader can interpret its meaning and relevance more accurately. You know, if an Englishman is writing something, a book, within the context and confines of his environment, they are better able to understand where they're coming from, what the context is. And sometimes you are more forgiving of whatever is written because you know that it's not coming from another point of view, so to speak. The critical reader needs to analyze the intended audience of the text as well. Who is the text directed towards? So at this point in time, you need to look at the demographic characteristics, okay? What age range are they writing towards? What gender are they writing for? What is their ethnicity? What is their socioeconomic status? What's their economic background? What is the target audience? Okay? A reader needs to assess the interests, the preferences, prior knowledge of the audience, so to speak, and to understand how the author engages and informs them effectively. And then what are the expectations and the assumptions that the audience may have about the context and the content as well. Also the style and perhaps maybe even the purpose. How does the author address and challenge these expectations? Then you want to interpret the meaning and the relevance. Okay? The meaning and the relevance. By considering the context and the audience, a critical reader can interpret the meaning and the relevance of the text more accurately. You know, not everybody is a critical reader. Some people just read for entertainment, and they take the text at face value. But as a critical reader, you want to be doing these things. So as a critical reader, you're able to recognize the historical, the cultural, and the social context that influences the author's perspective. Right? A critical reader will also understand how the text has been tailored to resonate with its intended audience and how it will address their concerns, interests, and expectations. Right? So what are the implications for critical thinking here? You have to consider the text and the audience. That way, you enable the readers to analyze their text in a broader and social, cultural, and historical context. A critical reader must develop the ability to interpret text more accurately. You have to be able to recognize the underlying biases and assumptions. We've said this, we can't flog it enough. Okay? And by understanding how text and audience shape the creation and context, the creation and reception of text, a reader will become more discerning and insightful interpreters of information. Okay? So we will stop here for now and we will resume at 1 p.m. If there are any questions so far, please feel free to ask before we go on break. Does anybody have any questions? Do you need any clarification before we proceed? Questions? Okay, if there are no questions, then we will stop here for now and we will conclude at 1 p.m. Thank you so very much for your time. We'll see you in an hour from now. All right, thank you, Aminu, for your response. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Is everyone here now? Or do we still have to wait for, okay, I don't think we're all here. Maybe we should give everyone else 5 more minutes to join and then we'll continue. we have just about an hour to go, and so we'll just go through the rest of the slides. Yeah. So have fun. I don't know why okay, great. So we're going to be going into vocabulary expansion exercises. So I'm just going to be teaching you on how to expand your vocabulary, okay? How to expand your vocabulary. So one of the, excuse me, sorry. I'm trying to make this thing disappear. I did it the first time, now I can't remember how I did it again. Anyways, let's just continue. So, vocabulary expansion exercises requires that we do a couple of things. And so here are some steps and activities that will help us expand our vocabulary. Okay? We need to enrich our vocabulary repertoire. And in order to do that, we need to read widely. We need to read a variety of texts, genres, styles, expose ourselves to a lot of different kinds of literature. Another thing we need to do that is helpful is the use of word lists and flashcards. Word lists and flashcards. Then contextual clues. Okay? Contextual clues. The dictionary and thesaurus is something that is very useful. I remember as a young girl, I used to read the dictionary quite a lot. Just starts from the very beginning with words and what they mean. Of course, as a young girl, or rather, I was very spongy, as it were. I would just take everything in. And then we have things like word games and puzzles. And then we have word roots, prefixes, and suffixes. I'm sure you remember we talked about prefixes and suffixes last week. Okay? So these are some exercises or tools, so to speak, that we can use to expand our vocabulary. Okay? So let's start with reading widely. Reading a diverse range of texts, including books, articles, essays, poetry, exposés, things like that. They will expose readers to a wide range of vocabulary in different contexts. I like to use audiobooks more these days because with audiobooks, it reinforces that I'm using the correct pronunciation that I prefer to use. I prefer to speak the Queen's English, that is the English, the British English. Some people prefer to use or speak with the American English. I'm not talking about accents now, because I neither have a British nor American accent. I believe I have a Nigerian accent. However, my pronunciation, my enunciation, my vocabulary use, my grammar, it is typically and largely British. So because of that, I want to listen more to British literature, English literature, when I'm affirming that, okay, this is the correct pronunciation to use for certain words, okay? So by encountering words in various contexts, readers not only learn new words, but they understand how those words are used in different situations. So read, and read more. Read different kinds of literature. Read British, read American, read Nigerian, read fiction, non-fiction, biographies, research work, all kinds of things, okay? Because there's everyday English, there's business English, there's academic English, like different kinds of English, okay? So read widely so that you're able to expand your vocabulary. Also, there's something called word lists and flashcards. When you create word lists or flashcards with different words, there's something called word of the day. It's like a kit, a word of the day kit, where there are different words with their meanings, and you can learn a word a day. Learn a word a day. Not words that you typically use every day, but words that you don't understand their meanings or that you've not heard before. Now, by doing that, you're expanding your vocabulary. You understand what they mean. You understand the context in which they're used, because there are things such as homographs, homophones, and things like that. So because of that, you need to understand, okay, in what context is this used? There are two words that are spelled the same, but mean different things. There are two words that are pronounced the same, but mean different things. So, and there are two words that are even spelled the same and pronounced differently. So you need to be able to understand what is what, and word lists and flashcards help you do those things and differentiate between those words. Then we have contextual clues. So contextual clues basically means surrounding words, phrases, and sentences that infer the meaning of an unfamiliar word. Okay, I used to do that a lot as a child. I started reading actual novels when I was about 6 years old, and I didn't really understand everything, all the words that were there, but because of the surrounding words, what was said before, what was said after, I generally am able to infer, okay, this is what this word implies, okay? And so by doing that, you also are able to deepen and understand your vocabulary. And then the dictionary and thesaurus use, like I said, I started reading the dictionary as a very young girl. I would just start from the very first word, aardvark, and this and that. And before I knew it, I had an extensive word database. So it's something that you might want to do. Okay, so this time around, I'm not saying read the dictionary. However, immediately you come in contact with a word that is unfamiliar, the best bet is for you to check it up. What does it mean? Look up the word in the dictionary. Okay, this is what it means. This is the context in which it is used. That way, even if you forget it that time, if you come across it again and you do the same thing again, before you know it, you have that word in your database. Word games and puzzles. That's another very good tool. Okay, and maybe I should also mention that I didn't grow up initially being able to speak English. My first language was not English. My first language was actually German. So after moving to Nigeria, I had to learn how to speak both English and Yoruba. And so I think that's why I was more interested in, doing these things, using the dictionary, reading a lot, just so that I could understand the words and what they meant and just be able to speak the language better. Excuse me. And so, because of that, I engaged in a lot of, word games, word puzzles, crosswords, things like that. Anything to do with words, I was always found, doing those things. And then we have the word roots, the prefixes and the suffixes. When you study the prefixes and the suffixes, it will help you decipher the meaning of unfamiliar words, because you're able to then break down those words sometimes. When you understand the etymology of words, it enables the reader to recognize, the patterns and make the correct connections between related words. Okay, so that way your vocabulary is more efficiently expanded. Then we have mnemonics and memory techniques. Mnemonics and memory techniques. Okay, so when you use such things as visualization, association, repetition, you're able to memorize and retain new vocabulary. Okay, so when you see a word and then you, excuse me, and you associate an image with it, for instance, and it's easy for you to then recall that word and use it appropriately. Okay, then we have contextual application. Contextual application. When you learn a new word, the best thing for you to do is to use it often. When you're speaking, wherever it becomes relevant, you use that word. When you're writing, when it's relevant, you use the word. You keep using it and using it so that it remains in your memory. And then it becomes a staple in your, everyday vocabulary. Okay, so let's go to writing skills. And under writing skills, we'll be talking about principles of effective writing, clarity, coherence, conciseness. We'll be talking about grammar and punctuation rules. We'll be talking about structuring essays, reports, and formal letters. So, principles of effective writing, clarity, coherence, and conciseness. In writing, just like in reading, clarity is important, okay? Write clearly. And remember, we mentioned it when the question was asked about being misinterpreted. When you write clearly, your message is not misunderstood by your audience, okay? Make sure that you're using the right verbs, express your actions in verbs. It's easier and better to understand than using nouns. So for instance, the cause of our school, this is the original sentence. The cause of our school's failure at teaching basic skills is not understanding the influence of cultural background and learning. Now that sentence in itself requires some thinking. However, if you say something like, our schools have failed to teach basic skills because educators do not understand how cultural backgrounds influence learning. Now look at that. That is pretty much straightforward and easy to understand. Okay, so I hope we understand where I'm going with this, right? Then we have clarity. Clarity. Clear writing ensures that your message is easily understood by your audience. It's important to avoid strings of prepositional phrases. An example here would be a revision of our program will result in increase in our efficiency in the servicing of our customers. Can you imagine speaking like this on a regular basis? It's ridiculous. How many prepositions do we have here? We have off, 1, in, 2, another in, 3, another in, 4, then another off, 5. Come on, 5 prepositions in one short sentence. That's a little too much. So what do we want to do? We want to sound clear, you know, and in doing that, we revise it to, if we revise the program, we can serve our customers more efficiently. Please, do you see any preposition here? No. But a lot of people, for the want of sounding important, and for just so that they sound like they can speak a lot of English and spark all the English in the world, they start to sound very convoluted by using all these prepositions. Don't use prepositions where they're not necessary, okay? Too many prepositions in one sentence makes it sound convoluted, okay? Choose clear subjects. Look at this subject, for instance. A more effective presentation of study resulted in our success despite an earlier start by others. Again, it's not clear. But when you say things like, although others started earlier, we succeeded because we presented our study more effectively. That makes it very clear and straightforward. Don't try to sound too academic, you know? Be very straightforward, be very clear, speak simply. Extend your vocabulary, but speak simply, please. Then coherence. Coherence. Coherent writing flows logically from one idea to the next. So we should use transitional words and phrases to connect sentences and paragraphs. Okay? Conciseness eliminates weak or unnecessary words. When you use words that are weak or unnecessary, you sound like you don't know exactly what you're saying. You also then kind of sound, I don't know, redundant, maybe. Okay, so choose deliberate words for impact. Then we want to go to what are grammar and punctuation rules. It's important to use punctuation in the right places. I promise you. If you don't, you'll be misunderstood. And I've seen it happen a lot. A lot of our Gen Zs, and even millennials also. I mean, we speak a lot of us speak quite. I don't know. It's not proper. We don't speak properly. We Gen Zs and we millennials, we don't speak properly. And it's very troubling because I see people present a paper, write a message, and I struggle to read some of those things sometimes, or rather to understand what it is that they're reading. Then I have to start all over from the beginning and try to figure out what it is that they're saying. So please, we need to be very, very careful. Grammar. She runs every morning. I mean, everybody knows, or so not, let me not assume, not everybody knows the right way to speak grammar. And I've said it before. Okay, I'm not in this class, but I will say for anybody who has challenges with their grammar, please buy brighter grammar. I'm sure we all know the book Brighter Grammar. We all use it in primary school. I'm sure we use it in primary 1 and primary 2, I think. So Brighter Grammar is a very good book. Mastering English is another book, a very good one. First Aid in English is another very good book. I promise you, it will help you if you have challenges with grammar. So it's correct to say she runs every day. It's incorrect to say she runs every day or every morning. Come on. But I've heard a lot of people say this, so I shouldn't take it for granted that everybody knows that this is the right application of the word run in this context. Verb tenses. Use appropriate verb tenses, past, present, future, to convey the timing of actions. The correct thing to say here is, I will attend the meeting tomorrow. I will attend the meeting tomorrow. I struggle to believe that the people who will say something like, I attended the meeting tomorrow. I struggle. However, I will not be presumptuous. Choose the correct pronouns, okay? So that you avoid ambiguity. John called his mother is the correct thing. John called her mother. But we know that a lot of people use his for her, her for his, she for he for she. So remember, when you're talking about a lady, you use she and her. When you're talking about a man, you use his or him, okay? I know that we know this, however, it wouldn't hurt to reiterate it. Vary sentence structures for readability. Simple, she sings. Compound, she sings and he dances. Complex, although she sings, he dances. Okay? Simple. Let's talk about punctuation. Commas. What do we use commas for? We use commas to separate items in a list, set off introductory phrases, and indicate pauses. List. I need apples, comma, bananas, comma, and oranges. That's in the list form. If you're using it in the introductory phrase, after work, comma, I'll go to the gym, full stop. Okay? Then we have semicolons. Where do we use semicolons? We use semicolons to connect closely related independent clauses. She loves hiking, semicolon. He prefers swimming. Now these two phrases or clauses, as it were, are separate and you can use them independently. You can say she loves hiking and leave it at that. You can say he prefers swimming and leave it at that. But if you want to connect them, then you say she loves hiking and then use a semicolon, he prefers swimming, right? Then colons. Colons introduce lists, explanations, or quotations. So in the list here, it says, please bring the following items: full colon, pen, paper, and calculator. In explanation, you use it like this. The reason is simple. We need more time. Okay? People use this incorrectly, but this is the correct way to use colons. And then we have dashes. Dashes emphasize or set off information within a sentence. She was determined, despite the odds, to succeed. She was determined, despite the odds, to succeed. Okay, so somebody is asking a question. Okay, so Biodun says, sorry, my apologies, Bello says him for her to and vice versa, absolutely. Someone said, What of this new pronouns that is being made popular abroad, where one person is being called them? And then Bello responds by saying that's a slang. It's used in British slang a lot. Actually, not only is it used in British slang, it's actually okay to use it in correct English. However, I think what Chukwebuka is saying is that, yeah, is where it's talking about people's pronouns. So there are people who have chosen to be gender neutral, right? They're non-binary. They don't subscribe to being male or female. Those people prefer to be addressed using the pronouns they or them. So that's what that means. Right, moving on. Apostrophes, okay? Apostrophes. Apostrophes are used for contractions and possessiveness, okay? So in contractions, IT apostrophe S means it's raining. That is in contractions. So it's the short form for it is, which means it's. Sorry, which is it's. It means it is, okay? And then in possessiveness, the cat's tail. That is belonging to the tail belonging to the cat's tail. The cat's tail. Okay, you're welcome, Belo. Okay, so the next thing, structuring essays, reports, and formal letters. Essays. When you're structuring your essays, you want to use introductions. You want to use introductions. That is the correct way to start an essay. Introductions. Present your topic and provide a context in your introduction. Okay? And then include a clear thesis statement. Then you use body paragraphs. Use body paragraphs. That means that you develop arguments with evidence, examples, and analysis. Following that, each paragraph should focus on a single point. And then you do your conclusion. That means that you summarize your key points and then restate your thesis in a fresh way. Okay? At the end of the day, the entirety of your text, your body, and the body of your writing should come in a short conclusion for you to end your text, at the same time summarize your points. That makes up your conclusion. Then we'll talk about reports. Reports. In your reports, you should have your title page. And this includes your report title, your name, the date, and whatever relevant detail is required as well. And then you have your abstract. That is the executive summary. You briefly outline the report content under this, and then you highlight the key findings and recommendations. And then the introduction. The introduction then describes the purpose and scope of your report and provides background information as well. Then the body. You present your findings, analysis, and recommendations, and then you organize logically with headings and subheadings, okay? And then your conclusion here, of course, is to summarize your key findings and then suggest the next steps or actions, because remember, this is a report, okay? Then formal letters. Formal letters. With formal letters, you start with the salutation. Address the recipient appropriately. Dear Mr. Smith, dear sir or ma'am, depending on, okay, it's possible that you may not even know the person's name. So if you do not know the person's name, then you address them as dear sir or dear ma'am. Or if you do know their name, dear Mr. Steve, Mr. Steve, Mr. Smith, Mr. Shukuloko Bangoshe, Mr. Jebako, Mr. Jangbala Jubu, or whatnot, okay? Then your introduction, you state the purpose of the letter. I am writing this letter, to request, explain, report, whatever it is, okay? Then the body, you provide details, explanations, or requests. Whatever it is that you have introduced, you then expatiate upon in the body, okay? And then organize logically with paragraphs. Organize logically with paragraphs. And then closing. So you end with a polite closing like sincerely, warm regards, best regards, things like that, kind regards, faithfully, different things like that. And then you sign your name below the closing, your signature. Sign your name below the closing. Else they may not know who that letter is coming from. Let's move on to speaking skills. Underneath speaking skills, we'll be looking at public speaking tips and techniques, voice modulation and body language, practice in delivering presentations, and participating in discussions. Public speaking tips and techniques, voice modulation and body language, practice in delivering presentations, and participating in discussions. Public speaking tips and techniques. In public speaking tips and techniques, we have to realize that public speaking is both an art and a skill. And so I'm going to show you some valuable tips to enhance your public speaking abilities. Number one, know your audience. You need to understand who you're addressing and tailor your content, your tone, and your approach accordingly. Okay? Consider their interests, their knowledge level, and their expectations. By considering their interests, you're able to tailor what it is you're going to say to them. By their knowledge level, you know what you need to teach them. And also, you're able to meet their expectations. So you need to prepare thoroughly, okay? Make sure that you research your topic well, you organize your thoughts logically, and you create an outline or structure for your speech. Very much like what I'm doing right now. Then you practice regularly. When you know that you're speaking to people, you need to practice your speech multiple times. Practice in front of a mirror if you're not used to doing it, and record yourself, just so that you know what you sound like. Familiarity with whatever it is that you're going to teach at the end of the day will breed confidence, and you're able to pass your message across adequately. Then, in order to control your nervousness, first and foremost, accept that nervousness is normal. If you're not used to speaking to a crowd, you're bound to be nervous. Even when you're used to speaking to a crowd or speaking or presenting publicly, you're bound to be nervous, even if you've been doing it before. Because you're not speaking to the same people over and over again. There's a new set of people every now and again. Secondly, focus on your message rather than your anxiety. Okay, try to put your anxiety aside as much as possible and focus on what it is that you've prepared. And by doing that, that's why it's important to be prepared, to study, to practice, because if you're practiced well, it's easier for you to focus on your message than your anxiety. That is, of course, assuming that you do not have any pre-existing stage fright or anything like that, okay? And then take deep breaths. Take deep breaths. Don't rush through anything, talk to yourself, affirm to yourself that you're able to do those things, and take deep breaths, okay? Then you want to engage your audience. So you use anecdotes, you use questions, you use relatable examples. If you're not doing a virtual presentation like I am right now, and you're standing in front of people, then you want to maintain eye contact, okay? And then encourage interaction, ask questions, okay? Tell people to ask questions or contributions, so to speak. Then use your visual aids wisely. Your slides, your props, your visual aids, they're meant to enhance and not distract. So keep them simple and relevant, okay? They shouldn't be there just for the sake of being there. Then we want to talk about voice modulation and body language. Voice modulation. We've talked about tone and pitch before. I'll just talk about it again. Vary your tone to convey different emotions. When you're being enthusiastic, you raise your voice just a little bit. When you're being serious, you bring down your tone just a little bit, and then adjust regularly for emphasis, okay? Then volume and pace. Vary your volume to maintain interest. Use pauses strategically for impact, and then avoid speaking too fast or too slowly. And then body language. Stand or sit straight with your shoulders relaxed, and then good posture always exudes confidence. Eye contact, again, I said it before, I'm saying it again. Connect with your audience by looking at them, and then avoid staring at one spot or reading too many notes, okay? Your gestures, use natural hand movements to emphasize your points, avoid excessive fidgeting or distracting gestures. All of these things require a lot of practice. Practice makes perfect, but don't always look for an opportunity to use these skills so that when the time arises that you really need it, you can fall back on your experience. Practice in delivering presentations and participating discussions. delivering presentations, for instance. State your purpose. That's the core of your introduction. State your purpose, grab attention. Okay? Develop your key points logically in your body and use visual stories and data. Use visuals, use stories, use data. And then summarize and leave a lasting impression in your conclusion. Okay? And then when you're participating in discussions, you want to make sure that you're listening actively. Listen to people attentively. And when questions are asked or when you need to respond, think about what you're about to say before saying it, okay? Use constructive contributions, share relevant insights, be respectful of differing opinions. If somebody's opinion differs to yours, don't impose your opinion on them, okay? Don't impose your opinion on people. Everybody is allowed to have different opinions. In listening skills, we're going to learn about active listening strategies, note-taking techniques, and we spoke about note-taking techniques last week, so we'll not dwell too much on it, and then understanding different accents and speech patterns, okay? In active listening strategies, active listening involves you fully engaging, with whatever content it is, especially when it is spoken content, in order to understand and to retain that information, okay? And so what you want to do is you want to focus on stressed words. That is, you listen for longer, listen for louder words, listen for longer and louder words, usually the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, the adverbs. You want to listen for all those ones, okay? We want to listen for stressed words, especially because these ones carry the most important information. When somebody is stressing on something, you know that is carrying the important information of that message, okay? Then we want to identify the subject-verb relationships, okay? So you understand the structure of the sentence and you note how that subject and the verb relate to one another, right? Pay attention to repeated terms and pauses. Repeated terms indicate key concepts. When somebody keeps repeating a particular term in what is being said, you need to make sure that you pay attention to that, okay? And then pauses allow you to process the information and anticipate what is coming next. Note-taking techniques. You want to understand different accents and speech patterns. So you listen. You listen. I've listened to different people from different parts of the world, and in listening attentively, you generally understand, especially when you know that, okay, certain people from a certain part of the world speak a particular way. Once you're able to figure that out, you'll be able to hear them better and understand them better, okay? So visualize information, train your mind to actively visualize the content as you hear it. Once somebody says something, create a mental picture, okay? Create a mental picture, a mental image as it relates to that topic. And then there's something called abbreviating phrases. When you're taking notes, sometimes it's easier to do to come up with your own kind of shorthand so that you're not spending too long writing when someone has moved on to another topic that you also need to then jot down on. So focus on capturing the essential information rather than just writing the entire thing that the person is saying, okay? Then we look at sentence structure, understand the overall sentence structure. When you do that, it's easy for you to write down, what needs to be written down, and then identify subject verb relationships and note modifiers or descriptors, okay? Understand different, okay, I already mentioned that. Then expose yourself to different accents, okay? Expose yourself to different accents. English is spoken with various accents worldwide. The way an Indian man speaks English is different from the way a Nigerian man speaks English. As a matter of fact, if you want to use Nigeria as a case study, you do know that so many different accents of English are spoken nationwide in Nigeria. Different tribes speak English in different ways. Then interpersonal communication, which we have already talked about earlier. We'll refresh again. Communication, okay, so we'll talk about, okay, we've already talked about all of this actually. So we want to make sure that in our interpersonal communication, we are open and we are honest. So foster trust by being open and honest with each other, share thoughts, feelings, experiences, and do all those things without fear of judgment. I mean, anybody who wants to judge, let them judge, but don't be afraid that you'll be judged, because it goes without saying, we'll be judged either positively or negatively. So don't worry too much about how you're judged. Listen attentively to your partner, show empathy and understanding, avoid interrupting or formulating responses while the other person is speaking. And a lot of people are actually guilty of this. Let people finish speaking before you speak, okay? Let people finish speaking before you speak. In your nonverbal communication, pay attention to body language, pay attention to facial expressions, pay attention to gestures. Nonverbal cues often convey emotions and intentions. Remember that in your conflict resolution, you have to be effective, okay? You have to be effective, and you have to take your conflict resolution skills and negotiation skills very, very seriously, okay? Always find time to identify the issue before even going into any kind of conflict resolution. Identify the issue, listen actively, understand, the other person's perspective, right? Seek common ground, find areas of agreement for both parties, right? And then brainstorm solutions. That means that you want to generate potential solutions together. Don't lean, on one person's side more than the other, okay? And then choose the best solution. Evaluate your options and decide on the course of action, okay? Prepare, be flexible, listen actively, stay calm, focus on a win-win. That means that you want to make sure that everybody is happy. And then in empathy and active listening in conversations, you want to put yourself in the other person's shoes, understand their feelings and experiences, and show compassion and support. By doing all these things, you're showing empathy, okay? Listen actively. You notice that active listening is a major player in everything that we've been saying so far. Listen actively, okay? Give your full attention to the speaker, avoid distractions, reflect back what you've heard to ensure understanding. In professional communication, sorry. Okay, just a minute, please. Sorry. Looking for something. Please give me a minute. Sorry about that. Thank you. I have to quickly get something done. So forgive me for stepping out just now. Okay, so in where was I? Yes. Okay. So in professional communication, you're going to be dealing with email etiquette and professional correspondence. And of course, it goes without saying, everybody uses emails. Everybody uses emails in the professional setting. So you need to have the right kind of etiquette where emails are concerned. You need to make sure that you respond to emails promptly as soon as you see them. You know the kind of language that you use when, excuse me, you know the kind of language that you use when you're responding to an email or when you're sending an email. Be formal, but polite, okay? There's a standard font that is used in the professional emails. So you use standard fonts like the Times New Roman, the Arial, Calibri, and things like that. Avoid excessive use of italics, bold in one email, and make sure that you have clear formatting before sending a copied text. Make sure you read it and be sure that it's conveying what it is that you need it to convey. And then you need to have clear subject lines. Title your email with a concise subject line, the type that will reflect the message of the content. Yes, you want it to grab attention, but it should not be different from what you're trying to convey, okay? And then make sure that you have the strict descriptive subject lines that improve open rates. And then make sure that you have a professional email address. Don't go and use baby girl 123 in your in your professional email. You look like an unserious individual. Yes, Bello, northern accent is very distinct from a Yoruba man. Absolutely, absolutely. And so is the Igbo. Absolutely. And all the other tribes in Nigeria. Okay, right. Writing your resumes, cover letters, and job applications is very important to, make sure that you have the right cover letters for your resumes and things like that. So your resume, make sure that you highlight your relevant skills, your achievements, your experience. Make sure that you use clean format with clear headings and tailor your resume to match the job description. You can't be applying for a job in I don't know, let me see, accounting, and go and tell people that, oh, you have experience in fashion. Doesn't make sense. Okay, address the cover letter to the hiring manager, and if possible by name, and then introduce yourself and express your enthusiasm for the position. And of course, highlight the qualifications and explain how you can contribute, how you're going to add value to the organization that you're applying to, right? And then make sure that the interviews that are being conducted, if you're the person who is hiring, make sure that you help the candidate evaluate and make informed hiring decisions, okay? And then in preparation, familiarize yourself with the job, okay? Familiarize yourself with the job, what it is they do in the organization and things like that, and how you can work, adequately with them, and then make sure that, that's the, what's it called? Okay, so this is familiarization, preparation on both sides. And then the person who is doing the interviewing needs to also make sure that the questions are based on the job description, okay? Choose quiet location for interviews, ensure you have necessary materials, resumes, copies, notepads, the interview process. If you're the one doing the interviewing, address the candidate by name, begin with an attention-grabbing opening, ask behavioral questions to assess skills and fits, whether or not that person will fit into your organization. And then you who is being interviewed, make sure that you're listening actively and taking notes as well. And then we want to talk about digital communication, okay? Under digital communications, we'll talk about the online communication tools and platforms, the social media etiquette, digital literacy, and responsible online behavior, okay? Because online tools are essential for connecting people, collaborating, sharing information, and all whatnot. So here are some of those tools. We're all familiar with email, traditional yet effective for professional communication. We still use emails in all organizations, so to speak. Okay, instant messaging. So within the context of your organization, we have different tools that we use, like Slack, like Microsoft Teams, like WhatsApp, depending on what your organization subscribes to. So you can decide on which instant messaging tool you want to use. Either way, they're very useful and they make the job faster. So within the context of organizations, we use things like Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams for our virtual meetings. And our collaboration suites, we use tools like Microsoft Office 365, Google Workspace, or Notion for document collaboration, so that you don't have to move flash drives around or things like that. You can just send your message, your documents, and all those other things via these tools. Okay, project management tools. If your organization is one that does project management and things like that, you want to use tools like Trello, Asana, and Basecamp for your team coordination. And then for cloud storage and file sharing, I'm sure we all know that things like Google Drive, like Dropbox and OneDrive, are very useful and helpful for cloud storage and file sharing. And then social intranets, different, we have the ones that we use for different things in the organization, like sharing your documents and things like that, or putting up birthdays and things, just for general communication and information sharing. Okay, so social media etiquette refers to the guidelines and norms for responsible behavior on social platforms. And I know a lot of us do not have proper social media etiquette. We comment without thinking, without reading properly, and these are things that should not be found with anybody who knows how to communicate adequately. So be respectful, be polite, be considerate in your interactions, avoid offensive language or personal attacks. And people do that a lot. I mean, why? But, well, I guess everybody goes through what they're going through. However, regardless of what people are going through, what you're going through as a person, also think about what other people are going through and just try as much as possible to be respectful and kind, okay? Privacy and security. Make sure that your personal information is protected at all times, and then adjust your privacy to make sure you're certain of who can see your content or not. Not everybody is allowed to see your content, especially if it is delicate, okay? Authenticity and transparency is very important, so be genuine and honest in your posts. And if you have any kind of sponsored content or affiliation, it's important to disclose them, okay? Literacy and responsible behavior online. I mean, digital literacy and responsible behavior online is, I think, the last thing that we'll be talking about before we end this class today. And this involves understanding and using technology effectively. And in order to do that, you have to be a critical thinker. Again, this takes us back to what we've learned earlier today. Evaluate online information for reliability and accuracy. Recognize misinformation and fake news. Even if you don't recognize it on the bat, you can always go back and check for whether or not it is fake news. It's easy to fact check all these things these days, okay? Yeah, and finally, cybersecurity awareness, okay? Protect your data from cyber threats, phishing, hacking, use strong passwords, and avoid suspicious links, and be mindful of what you share online. The internet never forgets. So be mindful of what you share online and understand the impact of your digital presence. This way, you're adequately managing your digital footprint. Okay, so thank you so very much for being here. I fully and completely appreciate your time in my class today. Thank you for coming for my TED Talk. Okay, so if you have any questions, please, I want to hear them and I want to address them. Any questions, please? Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Okay, so if there are no questions, I just want to say once again, thank you very much. And I hope that you enjoyed the class. Thank you very much, Delo. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How to remove fear when giving a public speech. I believe I addressed that earlier. And I said, practice, practice, practice. Focus on your content and not on your fear, okay? And that's something that only you can do. Focus more on your content. Make sure that you are prepared. Once you're prepared adequately, it will be, you'll be able to focus more on what it is that you're about to talk about, and you'll be able to move past the fear. Okay, beautiful. Thank you very much for reiterating that, Stephen. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I believe there are no more questions. So do have a lovely day ahead. And I thoroughly enjoyed being here with you. See you next time for GNS 102. All right?
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really a wonderful time with you. I enjoyed every bit of your session. Thank you so much. Okay, I believe
Thank you.
yes, ma'am. So I know I believe we don't have any other question. Okay, in order to reiterate again, please, we'll be having our test on Monday. Kindly read up from the questions that was sent to you. All right, we'll be selecting some questions out of there. Then a link will be sent to you tomorrow for the test. Take the test at your convenience. And do have a beautiful weekend. Bye for now.